pour présenter.
Do you know when the last class would be?
Last class is on August 22nd.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started now. So one thing I want to point out is for the homework this week, only 16 people turned it in. So we're not sure if that's whether the homework was difficult this time or if you guys just like forgot to turn it in. So even if you guys think the homework is difficult from next time onwards, can you guys just like turn it in, but then say I didn't get how to do like this problem or something, so we can go over it better in the class. And for this time, because some people haven't turned it in, we'll give you guys like about until like Monday to turn it in, so you guys can still get the credit for it. That's all I wanted to say regarding the homework. And I think we can get started now. First, we're going to go over the week 3 homework. So I'm going to go ahead and do that.
Our first problem was the for loop, asking you like what will be printed when the code is run. So first we have our for loop, and we're basically iterating through each character in the string how are you, and so we print each character on a new line until C is equal to Y, and that's when we break. So basically that's when the loop terminates. So it should have printed how and R. And then for our second question, write a loop that will print the even numbers from 0 to 10 inclusive. So basically we have a variable x and we're initializing that to 0. And then we have our while loop. X is less than or equal to 10. So this while loop is gonna run as long as x is less than or equal to 10. And then since we want to print the even numbers, we have to have a conditional statement, seeing if x is divisible by 2 using the modulus operator. And if it is, then we print x and we increment x by 1. So if we run it, it should print 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And then our third question was the longer one. Write a program that asks for the user's name if they want a burger, salad, or pizza, and also if they want a drink with their meal, and prints out their order and the price of it. Note a drink is always a quarter of the price of the meal. And then we have our menu. Burger is $5.50, pizza is $3.10, and salad is $4.30. Let me just bring up the code. So first, we write an input asking for the user's name. I just printed hi and the name. You didn't have to do that. And then another input for do you want a burger, pizza, or salad? And also another input for do you want a drink, yes or no? And this is where we have our nested conditional statements. So if the user did not want a drink, these are the print statements that could be printed out. So basically, if the user did not want a drink and they ordered a burger, it's going to print a burger and the price of a burger. If they didn't order a drink and they ordered a pizza, then it'll print out you ordered a pizza and the total is $3.10. And then if the user ordered a salad and not a drink, it would print out you ordered a salad and the total price is $4.30. And then we have our nested else statement. So this is basically when the user ordered a drink. So if the user ordered a burger and a drink, so basically a drink is always a quarter of the price of the meal. So we needed to get our price with the drink. So we're basically multiplying 1/4 or 0.25 by the burger price and then adding the burger price to that drink price. And then we're printing it out. And then we're printing you ordered a burger with the drink, the total price is, and we're concatenating this variable to our print statement. And then we also did that with the pizza and the salad. And then I finally printed thank you for coming. So I'll just put my name. And I'll say pizza. Yes. And then it prints out you order pizza with the drink. The total price is $3.87. Thank you for coming. And then finally, we had another nested conditionals problem. What will be printed when the code is run? So since the age is 50, this if statement is true. So we're going to check if this if statement is true or this else statement is true. Since 50 is not greater than 60, it will not print turning old, so it'll print middle age. And that's basically all of the homework. Okay, we can get started on the lesson, I guess.
Wait, does anybody have any questions on the homework? Because I know like a lot of you didn't turn it in. Was there like a specific part that you didn't get then or something? Okay, I'll take that as a no. Okay.
Okay. Hi, welcome to week 4 of the Python programming workshop. Last week we discussed about how we can use functions, what functions are, how we can use them. This week we're going to be talking about how we can actually write functions. So a quick review, what is a function? A function is a block of code that can only be run when it is called. And functions, they usually have parameters, which is a way for the user to pass in data to the function. And functions can also return data of a specified type as well. So here's a basic formula for writing functions. Usually for functions in Python, we created it using the def keyword, which is defining function. So basically we write the def keyword and then our function name. It can be any function name. For example, like my underscore function, and then parentheses and a colon. And then inside that function, we can write any other things we want, like print statements, if then loops, if else loops, and so on. So calling a function. Calling a function is pretty simple. You just basically type in the function name, the parentheses, and inside any parameters you want to call and hit run. And this will then print out the parameters you ask the function. So what is the purpose of functions? Functions help split our program to modular chunks. And as our program gets larger and more complex, it helps make our program more organized and manageable. And functions also help avoid repetition of our code. So suppose we want our code to do the something in the like 5 times, we can just convert that into a function and it can do that same thing 5 times. And it allows the code to be reusable instead of having to type in like 1,000 lines of code, whereas you could just shorten it with functions into like 100 lines of code, as an example. So now we're going to get started with some examples of functions. So here's a basic example of functions. So as you can see, this function right here, def my function is the name of our function, and we have our parentheses. And in this case, we don't have any parameters. Later on, we'll look into how we can use parameters to pass in data to our function. But using this function, we can just call this function by typing in the function name, which is my function, writing the parentheses, and hitting run. So as you can see over here, it prints our desired output, which is, in this case, hello from a so our next example is going to be function with parameters. In this case, the parameters are going to be name, age, and school. So we have def my function parameters name, age, and school. And when we call this function this time, we have to actually now write what data we're going to pass into the function. So we have to write the function name, parentheses, and we can write any name, age, and school we want. So just take me, for example. We always, most of the time, if we're writing strings like these, we always have to write in strings. So my function, Suje, 15 as my age, and Jericho high school. So now when we run this function, it's going to now concatenate these strings you see here, hello, who is years old, and goes to. It's going to concatenate those strings with these parameters we have, name, age, and school. So now when we get our output, our output's going to be, sorry, 1 minute. Just give me a minute, sorry. Okay, I'll come back to this problem. I have to see what the problem is. But yeah, so when we call this function right here, it'll print hello, CJ, who is 15 years old and goes to Jericho High School. So in our next function, I want you to see how we can call this function. Our function is def print underscore a score, and our parameter is %. So when we get this, when we get our output, we're going to be printing I got A and then our percent and then percent on my math test. So can you just type in the chat how we can get our output in this case?
Somebody had a question if you're allowed to use the same function name with different parameters.
Use the same function name with different parameters.
Mm.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. Like you can do print score here, and then percent. Percent is basically like describing your value. So you can do probably like percentage, and then you have to update it over here percentage, and then you can call it by saying your function name and then whatever percentage you got. Okay, so the way we call this function is by typing in the function name. Wait, sorry. Typing in our function name. In this case, it's print score, our parentheses, and our percentage. Let's just say 100. Okay, sorry, actually the reason it didn't work is because I forgot to comment this out. So let's just try this example again. So we can type in our function name and the parameters we want to use. So our data is going to be CJ 15 and Jericho High. So when we run this out, we get hello CJ, who is 15 years old and goes to Jericho High School. And we also get, as we said in this example, I got 100% on my math test. It's basically concatenating these two strings with our percentage parameter. So um 1 minute. So our next example is now greeting someone. So how can we call this function in order to greet someone? For the name, just put any name you can think of. But how can we greet someone using this function? Type it in the chat, please. Can anyone else see guess so how we can call this function? Can you type it in the chat, please? Yeah, great job for those who typed it in the chat. Read our function name, parentheses, and the name. So let's just say for this, in this case, Bob, all right? So when we print this, it's gonna, when we call this, it's gonna print our two strings, and it's gonna concatenate that with our parameter. So as we get our desired output as hello Bob, good morning. So our next example is now going to be printing out famous names. So we have or here Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Bill Nye, Jeff Bezos, and Larry Page. All right. So how can we call this function now? Type it in the chat, please. Or if you want, you can unmute and say your answers. Does anyone have any more answers? Okay, so good job to the people who typed the answers in the chat. So yeah, we type in our function name again. In this case, it's fame names. We type in our parentheses and we add our parameters. In this case, it'll be Bill, Jeff, and Larry. So when we call this function now, it'll print out Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Bill Nye, Jeff Bezos, and Larry Page, as you can see here. Because basically we're combining our parameters and our string. So yeah, that's another pretty cool thing about functions. It can call like the same parameters for different lines of code over and over again. So it can call Bill from the first print statement, the second print statement, and the third print statement, and it can replace it with the string to make Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, and Bill Nye. So
Is there a way to specify the types that, like the data types that each parameter takes in?
yeah, there is a way. We're going to be covering that in one of these examples. So yeah, but actually I could show you right now. Yeah, or here. So this function we have def my function, and inside we have a parameter country, and we defined it as country equals the string Norway. So when we call this function, we call it by typing in the function name, my function, putting in the parentheses, and instead of typing in Norway, we could type in Norway and it gives us the same output. There's a shortcut Python makes to this. Just leave nothing at all inside the parentheses. So when we print this, we get I am from Norway. So it's a really, that's why Python is really trustworthy, because it really shortens the amount of code you put into your program. Say like languages like Java or HTML, you have to actually like write not millions, but thousands of lines of code in order to make like one program. So Python just shortens that with its trustworthy tools such as functions, loops, and variables and all, to make it much more simplified, such as in this example. And also you could also even write my function Sweden, and it'll print I am from Sweden. So yeah, that's why Python's so trustworthy, this nature. So another example I was going to show you is this example. In this example, we're going to be not only incorporating functions, but also if and else statements, if, elif, and else statements. And we're going to be writing a function using that. So you saw this example previously in week 2, I think, or week 3, week 2, I think, yeah, where we had an if, elif, and else statement printing out if this grade is equal to 90 or about, then print distinction. If it's equal to 80 or about, print merit. If it's equal to 70 or about, print pass. And if it isn't equal to any of these, print fail. So now we're going to be incorporating this if elif statement and calling it using a function. So you can just type in, actually, I want you to figure it out yourselves. Type it in the chat when you got the answer. So we have this function right here, and we've incorporated an if elif else statement. So now, using what you learned so far in the previous examples, I want you to call this function right here and print um, print an output based on your the value you give to the x parameter. Yeah, great job. So to call this function, we basically write print underscore score, our parentheses, and any value we can put in for x. Let's just say 98. So when we print this, we don't have to print it as a string because we're incorporating these Boolean statements right here. If x is greater than or equal to the integer 90, we put it in a string. So we can write an integer in this value right here. And when we run the statement, we get the computer prints distinction as 98 is greater than or equal to 90. And any value you can put over here, 75. And we still get an output pass, right? So the next type of function we can use are incorporating for loops in that function. So just give me a minute. Yeah, this is a function right here. And what I want you to do is actually let's just discuss about this function right here. We have our function over here, and we nested a loop statement over here. So for x in food, print x. So we've defined fruits over here. In this thing, we're going to be printing out fruits in a different kind of fruit in each line. So we define fruits as equals to apples and bananas and cherries. So now I want you to put in the chat how we can call this function. This is a bit of a tricky one, so I'll give you 5 or 10 minutes to solve this. But just think of what all you can do using this function. Great job, guys. I never expected it to take this short of time, but great job. So yeah, we write my function, and since we already defined our value here, our variable here, fruits, as apple, banana, and cherry, we can just write as our parameter fruits and run this. So now when we run this, we get apple, banana, and cherry. That's how you can also incorporate a loop statements, for loops, while loops, and other loop statements into Python and into functions. So this is going to be our last two examples. We have over here, I'm just going to show you this time because this is also a bit tricky to understand, but we have over here our my function as our function name, and as our parameter we have x. So we wrote def my function x, and inside that we wrote return 10 times x. So return is another pretty important keyword in when you write functions. It basically returns values to you when where you've already defined it. So over here, this is how we now call the function. We don't call it using just the function name and our parameter. We call it because then that won't print anything. We haven't asked it to print something. It's okay for instances, say like this, where we already said print x. All right. Let me just uncomment it for a second. Already wrote our print statement, and we've already defined our variable, so we can just leave it as is. But for something like this where we wrote return, it won't just print out the statement with a return. We also have to print out our my function when we call it. So in this case, we have our print statement. Inside that, we have my function, and inside the second set of parentheses, we have 4. So what this program is going to do is it's going to return the value of 10 times x. And in this case, x is 4. And same things for the other two print statements. So when we run this, we get 10 times 4, which is equal to 40, 10 times 5, 50, 10 times 3, 30. So the next example I want you to do by yourselves and type it in the chat based on what you learned in this previous example. If you need more help understanding, feel free to ask me in the chat if you have any questions about what we learned so far.
They want you to go over the greeting one and the hello to Jay who is in.
Okay. Do they have any specific questions about that?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So in this example, and another thing before we get into these two examples, I forgot to mention, usually Python programmers, when they define their function names, they usually start off with verbs. In this case, I haven't started mine off much with verbs. I started off with anything. But as you can see over here, in this function, our function name is print score. We started it off with a verb, which is print, and then we ended it with any other word. So usually Python programmers do that. Let's just say insert student or insert hours. I'm just taking it from a project I did recently. I used for my functions, I used the function name, which is insert. The verb is insert, and then I had an underscore hours, which is the function name. So usually Python programmers write their function names usually starting with a verb. So now for these two, for the first example, our function name is my function. We defined it as my function with these parameters, name, age, and school. So inside that function, we have a print statement, which is hello plus the name plus the string who is plus age plus the string years old and goes to plus the school. So what this statement is basically doing is it's saying hello QJ, which is the data we passed into the function, who is the age which we passed into the function, years old and goes to Jericho High School. Does everyone get that? Do they have any questions about what I just said? Okay. So when we call this function now, we're basically typing in our function name, and we're adding the data we want to pass into the parameters, which is QJ, 15, and Jericho High School. So when we run this, we're basically telling the compiler, okay, we gave you this data to input into your parameters, and we want you to basically concatenate this data and replace it with those parameters, and concatenate those with the strings we see or hear. So which is hello, who is years old and goes to. So basically, when we tell the compiler this using our call function, we get hello CJ, who is 15 years old and goes to Jericho High School. We basically replaced the name, age, and school parameters with CJ, 15, and Jericho High School respectively. So it then prints this output right here. Does anyone have any questions with that? Did everyone understand this? Okay, I'm gonna take that as a yes. Okay, good. So now this function right here, our function name is greet, and the parameter we're passing into this function is name. So inside this function, we have our print statement, which is concatenating the strings hello and good morning, and we're combining this with the parameter name. In case you forgot what concatenate means, it basically means combining it. So when you see those pluses or anything else, when you see those pluses I gave for this function, basically concatenating or combining this string with the parameter with this other string. So when we call this function, we basically have to write our function name, as you see or hear, greet. And another thing, Python is cap sensitive. So if you write or there a lowercase g and an uppercase g, it's gonna give it's gonna give a red line. So when you run this, it's gonna give an error. So that's why it's always good to type in the same name and with the same um so that the Python compiler doesn't get confused. You type in G or here and an uppercase G or here and uppercase G or here, then that's fine. We can still call this function. But if you type in like one uppercase G and one lowercase g for the calling of the function, then it won't run. So as you can see here, we have greet, which is the function name, and we have our string Bob. So basically, this string is we're saying to the compiler, replace the name parameter we wrote in the print statement with this string Bob, so that we can get our output. So when we run this function, we get hello Bob, good morning. Does anyone have any questions with that? Do you have any questions on that? Did you say yes because? Okay, good. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me. So our final statement or here is going to be def my function. My function is a function name, and our two parameters right here, x and y. And we wrote this statement. Inside that, we wrote the return statement. Sorry. We wrote the return statement x times y, return x times y. And now I want you to figure out how we can call this function based on what we learned over here in this function. So just type it in the chat when you got the answer. Any more answers? Okay, good. We got some answers in the chat. We got a different answer. So I just want to see. Okay. I think my connection is pretty bad. So can't see what the problem. Give me a minute. Does Sneha or Shweta or anyone else, do you have like a REPL ready so that you can try to see if this function works in each other? Okay. So basically what I wanted to show you was how we can like just simply write our function. So instead of writing num equals 3 comma 4 or and then print num, we could easily just write print parentheses my underscore function, and inside the second set of parentheses we can write like any value 30 comma 4 4 comma 5, and the return statement will just basically return uh, the return x times y. So basically 4 times 5 will equal 20, so it will return 20. So yeah, that was our last example. Good job to those people who wrote in the chat the answers. So our homework for this week is going to be to try it yourself, to create a function using what you learned. And it could be a function trying to solve a real world problem, or it could be a silly one, or probably like a simple one, something that has to do with the hobby or subject you like. So I want you to try it yourself and come up with, be creative. At the same time, use what you learned and come up with a function that can do what I've asked you to do. And one more assignment I'm going to be asking you to try to do is going to be an extra challenge. It's going to be writing a function to find like the max of 3 different numbers, any set of numbers, but try writing a function to find the max of these 3 numbers. So yeah. So thank you for coming to this session. I'll post the homework also in the Google Classroom. And yeah, thank you. You're free to leave.
Oh, I actually would like to talk about one more thing. So I know like some of the content can be overwhelming and you might have a lot of doubts that we couldn't clear up in class. So we'll be having office hours where you can where we can like go on a private Zoom session and you can ask questions about like homework or some of the material in class, and I'll post the schedule to that on Google Classroom as well.
And also one last thing before you guys leave, just make sure you're still working on your independent projects, like using what you're learning each week to like add more stuff to your project. You guys only have like 2 more weeks to get those done. We're gonna like be presenting them during our last class, so just make sure like you're working on it every week along with the regular homework.
And this week, we're going to also have homework along with the week 4 homework. We're going to also ask that you guys submit like how much of your independent project you guys have already finished, just like as a checkpoint, and also like say like how you can use today's lesson to help in your project. We just want, like the code you've written so far, like on a Google Doc is fine too, just to have like a checkpoint so we can see where you guys are at and just like pacing yourself correctly. Post that assignment on Google Classroom. Any other? Okay, so if you have any other questions, you guys are free to go.